Counting.
5, 6, 7.
In 4, damn it! Look at me.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Motherfucker! You hit me in the ear!
Bitch.
Hey, bitch. Why don't you suck on this shit, motherfucker?
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains. Damn!
Game over.
What's up, dude?
What's up?
So
What an
I know,
informal show we're gonna have here tonight. Just literally just us bullshitting for an hour. This will be fun.
I mean,
Which you've never done.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what the crux of the show really is. So it's like even there's no structure. So even if it's just two people just chit chatting about movies, it's So I know you're really been bogged down talking Christmas stuff. So I'm gonna shy away from Christmas.
No, it's
stuff.
okay.
I know
It's fine. Like I'm in Christmas mode anyways. Like we did a show last night and tonight all about Christmas, so I've been inundated. But it's fine. We were getting it all out of the way at the beginning of December so that we could kind of do some other stuff later. But it was just kind of a kickoff. But yeah, it's fine. We can talk Christmas stuff.
There's actually one thing that I want to talk about. I didn't get a chance to watch the tier fights yet, but I watched the bracket fight, the tournament fight, 64, and no one except for Malcolm seen Last Christmas, and I love Last Christmas. So watching you guys like dismiss it, I guess that's the best way to phrase it.
I wasn't dismissing it because I was only dismissing it because I hadn't seen it. The only thing I remembered of it was the trailer, and I remember the trailer on YouTube getting a ton of like heat and flack just because like it just looked bad. Like I think it was poorly marketed. So to be fair, I have not seen the movie, so I'm not dismissing the movie. I haven't seen it.
That's definitely fair. So a similar one that I can say that it's along those lines is the one what Olivia Wilde and Oscar Isaac movie. I don't remember what it's called. It's like Amazon Prime original where a lot of people either love it or hate it because it's quote unquote Hallmarky. So if you're not into that, then it doesn't work. But if you are, it's a well done version of that. And I feel like Last Christmas is along those lines of like you guys kind of alluded to when you guys were doing your discussion about the spoiler and just the concept. And at the end of the day, a concept doesn't need to be original or like mind-blowingly quote unquote shocking if like the heart and the emotion really is earned and developed. And I really do think it has that, especially like when Emilia Clarke's character, everything, her growth and like just kind of her coming about. It's one of those where it's like an adult life crisis, like if you've seen Frances Ha or like even like Amelie, where it's like just the trying to figure out who you are, and it's one of those situations. So Inside Llewyn Davis, like there's a bunch of those movies that I like. I don't like Amelie, but I like the other two where it's along those lines. So if that sounds interesting to you, I would recommend it, especially because you also talked about how Paul Feig did it. So it's one of those where it's like not a good director at the helm, so you at least know it's going to be well made and sharply written. So if the content sounds at least borderline, I would say give it a chance because it's better than it sounds on paper. So I
know. You bring up an interesting thing about the Hallmark community. There's like these people that they get sucked into that Hallmark movie thing, and even Alonzo Duralde, who was just on the show a minute ago, has a new movie guidebook all about those Hallmark movies and kind of this weird universe they've set up. In that there was a point you made about I think it's like a comfort thing. Like people get into those movies because they're like these comfort movies where they're going to hit a lot of the same beats. They're going to hit a lot of the same sentiments, but like they're always going to have like a happy ending. They're always going to, have those feel good moments. And I can appreciate that as far as like just, again, comfort movies. We all have comfort movies where, we put them on because we can just get sucked into like some world or with some characters and hang out with people for an hour and a half or 2 hours. And I think, it's fascinating. I'm not into that Hallmark thing, but I think it's interesting. And I've only ever watched them as maybe along with some of my podcasts I listen to that sort of make fun of a few specific ones, but so I would watch them just to listen to the podcast about it. but yeah, I mean, I do find it interesting that people who are into that sort of thing.
The first concept that came to mind when you started even talking about all that, or any of the dog related movies, like A Dog's Purpose, Dog's Way Home.
Oh yeah, right.
It hits the beats of, and I want to do on the flip of that. If you've never seen The Art of Racing in the Rain with Emilio Ventimiglia, if you've never seen
Milo
that,
Ventimiglia, yeah. Rocky's kid.
Yeah,
Rocky's
exactly.
kid.
Honestly,
you better land that one, Henry.
It's plot only. It's plot only, bitch. We're good. But if you haven't seen that one, that's another one similar to like Last Christmas, where it does exactly on paper what it should, but I feel like it just earns the emotional beats that it has. So those are the two of the hallmarkier ones of recent memory that I'm like, those got me. So Last Christmas and Art of Racing the Rain are two where I'm like, all right.
The last one I watched all the way through, as far as in that Hallmark thing, it was along with a podcast because they said it was so batshit crazy. It was there was one with Jenny McCarthy, and I know she does a bunch of those, but it was some like time loop movie where she was living the same day over and over again, which a couple of those movies do. Christmas over and over again, whatever the hell it was called. I have no idea what the title was. I couldn't tell you to save my life. But it was like Jenny McCarthy's living this day over and over again, and it just went into such crazy territory. Like it almost was like a sci-fi movie. And I don't even remember that much of it. Like I only watched it because of this. But I'm fascinated with bad movies, though. I will watch any really bad movie, even to just see how much it can sink. We have a thing on Tearjerker Fights where whatever list we put together, for whatever reason, I become the guy that will watch the worst movie on the list. I watched Ed for our baseball movie. I watched Air Bud Golden Receiver for our football movie. I watched Christmas with the Cranks and Deck the Halls for this recent Christmas one. I'm fascinated with that.
Definitely not happy about
no. I did not like. Well,
Claus.
I was about to. And then I saw that it's 2 hours, and I was like, fuck that. I'm not spending 2 hours on this thing. At least the other two were 90 minutes. That's what I would say. They're in and out. 90 minutes. I was not about to spend 2 hours watching Fred Claus.
So that's a good transition to a non-Christmas topic, but also so as I'm at the end of the year, I'm like finalizing my top 100 that I'm finally going to release like on a quote unquote official level, and then I'm also going to be on the tournament fights over on your
right. We're 64, yeah.
We'll be able to actually like have fun with it and see what my new favorite movie is. But as I'm doing it, I'm noticing a lot of movies that are like the tough cuts, because once you get down to the stretch, like you have some tough cuts, so you really have to nitpick. And some of the nitpicks I'm going through right now are wow, that feels a lot longer than 90 minutes. And it's ironic. Most of them are like at the 90 to 110 minute range. And I'm like, it feels a lot longer than that. Like it's not bad, but it does like, wow, that's only 90 minutes and it doesn't feel like it. Like one of the best examples is I love the movie to death, but Bottle Rocket is Wes Anderson's first movie. But there's just a lot going on, and there's a stretch in the second act where it's kind of just a lot of talking and kind of just meandering, which I enjoy because I love the characters and I love the story. But at the end of the day, when I'm nitpicking, I'm like, yeah, I guess that does it really takes me out of it for a couple minutes, and you can't be taken out of a couple minutes when there's only 90 of them. You know what I mean? So it's like it's one of those. Another one is Big Trouble in Little China, where all the highs with the fun and the camp and the cheese and just the score and the action, all of it. The quotes, I love that. But there's about a stretch of like 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. I'm like,
I think I know where it is. Are we in the same spot where it's when after they have that first big encounter in the alley with the Lord Raiden guy, and then they go back to the apartment and he's like on the phone, like half on the phone trying to get help, and like Kim Cattrall comes in. I feel like the movie kind of comes to a dead stop for like 10 minutes until it kind of gets back into it.
It's one of those ironic things where it's actively doing exposition, but like it's like satire of exposition while still doing the exposition. It's like Egg Shin, you mean that one guy, blah blah blah, and they're just saying these things, and it's you know, she's literally saying the things, but it's like so obvious she's saying them, and it's not even trying to hide
I
it. I don't
happen
know.
to be investigating this,
Yeah,
that, and the
it's
other. You know, da 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 da. Yeah,
look
it's
me,
weird.
it's just
Yeah.
what's her name, Marcy Lawless, you know what I mean? Like, hey,
Mhm.
that's, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's I don't know, is that satire? Is it not? But yeah, go ahead,
It's
Jeff.
Christopher Lambert you're looking for, right?
No.
Or is it
I wasn't
James
talking about that
Remar?
Lord Raiden. Just the guys in the
James
movie that come in
Remar?
the alley. They're
Oh shit.
they're wearing the Lord Raiden hats and they're shooting
I-
lightning. That's why.
One thing I do know, the Oscar
The Free
Isaac
Storm.
Olivia Wilde movie you were looking for is Life Itself.
Life Itself. Yep, that is exactly what I was thinking. That's why you have a fact checker behind the scenes.
That's what I'm here for.
I have
right.
I have a fun video. It's actually one of my favorite videos. It's just it would be like a YouTube short or a TikTok right now, where it's the Lord Raiden from Mortal Kombat when he has the one scene where he does something. He's like, "We're gonna kill them all," and then I dub over Tommy Wiseau's voice where he's like, "What a story, Mark," and he just laughs and it's all that. And it's just it's so funny where it's like if you're in the context of both of those scenes, you're like, "Oh, it's hilarious."
Oh,
But it's
hi, Mark.
yeah, it was just I don't remember. I've only seen Mortal Kombat once. So I don't remember like line for line, but it was one of those where it was when Raiden was telling the story. It was like, yes, and then this is the Mortal Kombat, and then he has this weird awkward laugh where he like looks like it's dubbed over, and then
The fate of billions is in your hands.
Mortal
sorry.
Kombat and Rocky are in the same pantheon for me, so
that is not a comparable thing. I cannot. All right, so that actually that's one of the ones that I really want to talk about today. So like me and Jake, we have a shared love for Rocky, and we're gonna. I don't know if it's gonna.
I was going to bring up Rocky. Oddly enough, can I bring up one thing related to Rocky?
Yeah,
have you guys seen?
I'll let you start.
Have you guys seen the Rocky IV director's cut? Because I went to the Fathom events
I
to
didn't
watch
see it in theater. I didn't see it in theater, so I didn't want to rush out to pay to see it right now, just because I'm actually doing a rewatch right now. So I want to watch the original, and then I might double feature them. So that's actually next on my watch. So I'm debating right now. So I'll let you.
I am also waiting until after I face Henry to watch it.
There you go. So
it is not involved in Henry and mine's match.
That's true. So without giving any spoilers, obviously, because
No.
But like, how would you review it? Is it better? Is
Yeah.
it worse? Is it weird?
Yeah, it's interesting.
One thing I saw like a picture on Twitter, and it looked like some really bad like graphics and CG. Was that just a weird picture, or is that real? So go ahead with everything.
It must have been a picture because I don't remember any like weird CG or anything. But I'll say this: it's a project that Stallone himself had been working on for a while, only because he just wasn't happy with the stuff that got cut out. So I know that they've been advertising this thing where it's like, oh, it's 40 extra minutes or 40 additional minutes. The movie is still 90 minutes. So what they did was they cut out some stuff, and he replaced it with other. Yeah, he cut out the robot stuff. He cut out a lot of the Bridget Nielsen.
Oh yeah, Nielsen.
Yeah, he cut out
his kid a lot too.
No, his kid is like gone from the movie. Like that whole stuff in the final fight where they keep cutting back to him and the kids like bouncing up and down, going like yeah, like all that stuff's gone. Bridget Nielsen is pretty much gone from the movie. Like she's there, but he cut out almost all of her lines. Really? That might be a thing because they were married for a while. Maybe he's got divorced thing. I don't know. Maybe it's he cut her out.
That's
So, but the stuff that he added back in, it's not really because it doesn't change the plot. It's not really like you can spoil anything. But I'll just give vague stuff. He adds in more from Apollo's funeral. There's a monologue that Duke gives that I can't believe they cut in the first place. It's great, really? Where it explains a little bit more about why Apollo wanted to continue to fight. There's a lot more leading up to Apollo's fight about why he has this drive inside of him to do this battle. It's like the way of the warrior they talk about, and wanting to make your own destiny and go out the way you want to, like things like they really explore that stuff.
They hint at it on my rewatch of Rocky 3. They hint at it, so I would definitely.
They go
parallel to watch them
way into that more. Yeah, if you watch them back to back, you'll see the fight itself with Apollo and Drago is longer. Like it's like 2 or 3 minutes longer. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're watching the fight, it's expanded and it makes it feel like a little more complete. There's more stuff during the entrance with Drago coming up where they just cut to him more, like looking at the stairs, the facial expressions, the face acting is interesting. Like you just get a little bit more of Drago just like taking in all this stuff. Basically, Stallone wanted the movie to breathe a little bit more on some of these things and to give it a little more depth. Like it definitely, the way he structured it changes the overall tone of the film. It's not so kind of over the top and cartoony and campy. It's like got this serious undertone to the whole thing. Drago even speaks in this one briefly during one of the press conferences. He has like a line or two. So he's less of a robot. So it's interesting. The stuff he didn't re-edit the last fight so much. He just tightened up a few things here and there, some additional shots with some tighter punches, a little bit more flurries, things like that. But it's just the little moments that are allowed to just kind of sit there and breathe. There's some more stuff with him and Talia Shire on the staircase, before he does his driving montage, they're back and forth. It's just, it has a much different tone overall. Like I will say that he was able to kind of change the overall tone of the movie.
So my first, I have two questions. So it's a two-parter. One, how are you a Rocky fan as a whole? And two, how would you rate the original Rocky IV cut versus the new one? So answer all three of those technically.
Okay. I am a big Rocky fan, like pretty big Rocky. I've seen all, because I watched them every time they were on TV. Fun. So I mean, I know all the lines to all. I've seen all the fights 1,000 times. Like I've seen all those movies probably 100 times a piece. Like I love the Rocky movies. And then it depends on what. Okay. It depends on what mood you're in as far as which cut you want to watch. It really does. Because
if you're drunk as shit, you want the original, right?
You want the original one that's montage heavy, that's music heavy, that's a little bit breezier, doesn't take itself as seriously. But if you want to sit down and have something that's more in tone with like some of the earlier Rocky films, then you watch this new director's cut, and it kind of flows from 1 to 4. If you watch 1, 2, 3, and then watch the director's cut of 4, it kind of flows together a little bit better, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the tone, because even 3, as cartoony as some of the stuff gets, still has that serious kind of undertone
on the beach scene
with Rocky. Yeah, on the meat of the bone. So I think if you were to do that and you lead up to the Rocky IV director's cut, you'll see that it kind of flows a little bit more.
All right. So now we're just gonna turn this to a Rocky conversation, because why wouldn't you? Rocky's the shit.
Why not?
Sure. So I want to as I've only made it through the first 3 for the current rewatch. Like I've seen them all enough to where I have an idea. But in terms of studying for trivia, I'm watching them recently because I'm facing Jay. You can get in on this, by the way, too. We'll talk about that after the fact. But since you're a Rocky fan, but anyway,
I'm a big Rocky fan.
So I'm gonna spoil this right now. Rocky 1 is my number 1, like hands down. But Rocky 3 is a fucking.
It's pretty great.
Oh my god! Like there's no fluff in Rocky 3, because everything that's fluff is important for the overall concept and idea and like mythology of Rocky. Where everything with Paulie, you're just dealing with him being jealous and bitter and a drunk. Everything with Mickey, that's so important. The transition from Rocky solo / with Mickey going over to Apollo and everything out in California is super important. The beach, I'm gonna spoil this too. I'm a huge Rocky V fan. I'm probably the biggest Rocky V fan in the entire world. But
I don't hate it. I'm in the camp where I don't think it's that bad. I think people shit on it. I think it's perfect
film, and we'll get into that in a second. But all right, we'll get into that in a second. But
I don't know about that. I don't know if I go that far, but I will.
I'll die on that one. But anyway, so the beach scene in Rocky 3, kind of rivals the monologue that Adrian gives in Rocky 5, where it's like, how about your son? You know what I mean? And just the emotion. Like, I feel like arguably those are the 2 best opportunities that Talia Shire gets to act in the entire series. And not like she's like pushed aside, like she's an amazing character and she has a lot of depth and like, opportunity to grow. But like, those are the 2, shining moments. So like Rocky 3, there's so much that like, and it's, only like what, 100 minutes, 90 something minutes. So it's
it's like 92 minutes. It's a breezy
it's
one
even
too.
shorter.
Like
so it's like
Yeah.
Rocky 1, like it has everything that you want, and it's like it's so great, but like Rocky 3 is just so rewatchable at the same time. So it's like they border where it's like Rocky 1's the one, but it's like if I were to put 2 in my top 100, which that'll break my rule, I'm almost considering it for Rocky 3 because it's so great. So it's one of those.
Dude,
But
Clubber Lang is like raw as
Pity the
fuck in
Fool.
that movie. Like
Oh.
he is great. He's
Because
so good in
when
that
you think
movie.
about it, he's not a villain.
Yeah.
He's the antithesis of what you expect for just an athlete in a movie of just like he's literally the Rocky when Rocky and Rocky 1, like once he got the chance, and Rocky 2, but with like more like personality. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
The most personality Rocky is like, oh hey, that guy's big. You know what I mean? Like his little jokes that he has with Thunder
He
Lips.
makes a point when he's like, he's ducking me, taking these bum fights, fighting other bums, because he don't want to fight me, because Mickey's been scouting him. You see him scouting him, and he's like, Mickey's protecting him because he knows dude has that eye, he has that drive that Rocky's kind of lost, and he knows that this dude, when you have nothing to lose and everything to gain, like there is something to be said for that, like that those are some of the most dangerous people is ones who don't have anything to lose, which they go back to in Creed 2 with Drago's son. He has nothing to lose, so like he's going balls out.
Honestly, they have the hearts of their country to lose. So technically, he has actually more to lose, but more of like a pride aspect. So yeah, I get what you're saying, and that's kind of what I was saying. Transitions into the entire transitions to the entire Apollo thing. In the second half of the movie, where he's like, you don't have that eye. You know what I mean?
That's eye of the tiger. Look at them. Look at those guys in the gym. They've got that eye, Rock.
Exactly. And when you mentioned that about Rocky 4, where it's like there's more, they kind of touch on that. They expand on that, I should say, in Rocky in the director's cut, however you want to call it, the Drago cut. Whereas that's why I asked you. I'm like, oh, because they hinted at that, or they started that in 3, so that would be a nice transition.
There's even a different bit of dialogue that I will just spoil just a tiny bit. When after Apollo gets his ass whooped in that first round, and they get him back to the corner, before the second, he's begging him, let me stop the fight, and in the original cut, he just goes, don't stop this fight, no matter what. Like there's a whole thing where there's an additional scene they throw in even before at the beginning of the movie where they're just talking on the lawn, which I won't spoil any of that stuff, but I'll keep it vague. But it leads up to when they're in that corner and Apollo is looking at him going, if you're my friend, my true friend, you won't stop this fight. Something like it's a completely different thing. Like
so
you'll
deep.
know why I want to keep going. And it goes into this Warrior's Way thing like that they absolutely expand on. That part is so much better. Like
and
it's
you
so
even
much
see it
more
in the original where
out.
Rocky, his instinct is to do it, but then he remembers.
Hey, to be fair, the referee tries to stop the fight and Drago pushes him. People always have that criticism where the referee literally, when he's getting pummeled in the corner on those last couple of things, the referee tries to pull him. Drago shoves him and then gets in those final blows that kills him. Yeah. Because so the referee, obviously any ref worth their salt would stop the fight on their own at that point. I mean, he's getting pummeled. He's not protecting himself whatsoever. He's done. Like the ref tries to stop it, but so it wouldn't have mattered even if you thrown the towel. Drago would have still kept pummeling him. The only way they would have stopped it was in the corner.
Who knows the business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shout out that guy.
Shout out Austin as a ref.
I'm a referee. Listen, any ref with assault would have stopped it at that point anyway. So, if you watch the thing closely, the referee does try to stop the fight. It's just Drago shoves him away and then gets the final hit in. So that's what it is. So anybody who still says that, you don't watch the scene closer. You don't know what you're talking about. He tries to stop it. But yeah, the only way they would have stopped the fight is if he had not let him get out of the corner, after that first round. That's the only way it would have stopped. So anyways, but yeah, the fight just gives us so much more context. Like you said, when you watch Rocky 3 and 4 back to back, if you watch the Rocky 3, then watch the director's cut, it definitely flows and has a nice flow. You got to watch it, dude. It's worth it. It's worth it.
God.
You'll love it.
Okay. So the initial, what is your ranking of the Rocky movies?
Okay. It almost depends on what mood I'm in, because I fully acknowledge that Rocky 1 is the best pure film. You know what I mean? It's got the best character stuff. It is a deep dive into this character. So yeah, I fully acknowledge that. On any given day, I'm kind of with you that either Rocky 3 or 4 is kind of my favorite because they're the ones I go back and rewatch the most. If you know what I'm saying. Now, even with this new director's cut, I really loved it. Like, I loved it. I know some people online were kind of lukewarm on it, but man, like, I dug it. So like, it's going to take a couple more rewatches to creep up. But like, I'm kind of with you that I think Rocky 3 almost has everything you could kind of want in a Rocky movie kind of all smashed together. Like literally it's got the fun stuff with him and Hulk Hogan is fun. Yeah, I mean, but the fun stuff with him and Hogan is very lighthearted. But it also has like the stuff with Mickey, which is heartbreaking, with him crying and stuff. Like people criticize like Stallone crying. I think that's the most genuine crying I've ever seen in a movie. Yeah. Like when he's literally like he can't even speak, he's just like right? Like that's how people cry in real life. I've seen that, like that's how people are when they can't get the words out, when they're just bawling their eyes out. So that's really genuine. All this, I love Apollo training Rocky. Like that's just such a unique twist on everything. There was even people I saw on this message board way back in the day who pitched an alternate Rocky 3 where the movie started with Rocky loses to Clubber. Clubber then, because he challenges Apollo using his style beats Clubber. And then it sets up Super Fight 3 with Rocky and Apollo for the title. Which, I mean, so there's like an alternate thing. I don't know. It's fun to think about.
Like if you were to ever tell me that there was a director's cut of Rocky 3 where that happened, I wouldn't be surprised. Let's be honest.
You're not wrong.
Like Rocky's the only series that I watch them all like. I watch them back to back. Whereas the other ones like the MCU, I can just sprinkle here and there. Lord of the Rings, I can just watch one of them. Any other Saw movies, I can just watch one of them. Those are some of my favorites. Star Wars, you know what I mean? But Rocky, because they're so short in general that I can boom.
Yeah, you can breeze right through them. Yeah. Well, there's a reason that TNT plays them like on a Saturday afternoon, and you can just watch one right after another. And again, they flow so well together that one, 3 flows into 4, 2 flows into 3. They just flow. It's great.
What the fuck is the thing where they do 1 and 2 and then 5? And
that's just weird.
Like, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?
My what the fuck is you watch 4 and 5 and the little 8-year-old turns into Sage Stallone and you're just like, okay, how long was that flight back to the United States where he grew up 8 years? Sorry, that's not a perfect film, Henry. That's a major continuity error. Even you have to admit that.
I have a video essay that it's in the pocket. Don't worry.
Sure.
It's coming. So I'll let you criticize that. So
it's just keep going. I can dismiss that, but like it's when you watch them back to back, it's very, very jarring. I'm just saying.
Maybe that's fair. So I guess we'll end the Rocky talk with the Creed movies just slightly. Do you feel, this is just a question for both of you, do you feel like the Creed movies are a continuation of the Rocky series or a spin-off of the Rocky series?
I'm gonna say continuation.
I mean, obviously, the obvious answer, the common sense is like, oh, Rocky's in it. But in terms of like where it is,
I think it's a spinoff. It's a spinoff. It's Creed featuring Rocky. It's this new character featuring Rocky. Because we still get to check in on Rocky. And I actually rewatched. I'll tell you one thing, the Rocky 4 director's cut. You know what I did the next day after I saw that? I rewatched Creed 2. Because I wanted to see Drago. Because I wanted when you see it too, you'll want to put on Creed 2 immediately to see the continuation of Drago's story because it just makes it even better.
I loved Creed 2 from day one. Like literally Creed
2. You know why? One other reason I just remembered one thing they changed in the director's cut that makes it flow from that to Creed 2. You know how in the theatrical cut, when Rocky wins and at the end and he gives his speech and all the Soviet the leader guys stand up and give him a standing ovation.
Yeah.
In the director's cut, they stand up and turn their backs and walk away.
Oof, that's war.
So, but are they turning their backs on Rocky or are they turning their backs on Drago? I think they're turning their back on Drago.
Drago, for sure.
And it flows better than when you go jump into Creed 2 and he's been disbanded basically from the entire country and into another country and he's like, they want nothing to do with him anymore. Like he's disgraced them. It flows so much better. Dude, you're going to love this movie. You got to watch this shit. Yeah, they go to the Ukraine. Yeah,
right?
like you're gonna love this, bro. You got a lot. You're gonna love this shit. Like when you watch them all together, you're gonna love it.
You're gonna hate
Yeah.
this, but even just talking about Creed 2 for 2 seconds makes me like, fuck. Now that's literally it for me.
Yeah.
It goes Rocky 1, Rocky 3, Creed 2. Like those are my top 3. It's no doubt. Like I'm telling you, Creed 2 is the only movie I've ever watched like out of the theater. I'm like, I want to go work out, and like as someone who works out, like. I automatically should want to do that anyway, but like this movie, it's like it just gives me so much motivation. And like I really enjoy Creed 1, but I don't know, there's just something missing in terms of like the pacing and the flow. Like I feel like Ryan Coogler was just getting his feet wet on like the story. He's more used to like telling a big scale. And there was something about what is the director of the second one, Steven Capella? What is that? Something like that?
Something like that. I just looked it up. It
But
was like a week ago when I watched it. Yeah.
I feel like he had nothing to lose and really nothing to bring to the table, that he kind of just brought like the highlights of all the Rocky movies. And I feel like similar to Rocky 3, Creed 2 kind of does that, where it just kind of just goes with everything because it's not building anything up, and it just has that. So that's one of those things for me. So that's why, like, yes, I agree that the Creed movies are like spinoffs, but Creed 2 feels like Rocky 3, which is in competition with Rocky 1. So like those will
also because he loses. Like he needs to have that loss to have that redemption arc, you know, at the end of the movie, because he gets his ass kicked, you know, like in that I remember seeing Creed 2, and when I saw it in the theater, I am too. But anyways, I remember seeing Creed 2 in the theaters, Henry, and it got like an hour in the movie and they started the fight. I was like, wait a minute, what? Wait, the fight's already started? Like, it's not an hour. I thought this movie's like 2 hours. Like, it's not an hour and 45 minutes into the movie. Like, what's going on here? I was like, oh, he's gonna lose. And I was like, oh, but wait, but it doesn't he have the title in the fight? Like, oh, how are they gonna play this? And he gets disqualified, so he wins, but he doesn't really win. You know what I mean? Like, it's the like wrestling disqualification type of thing. And I was
especially
like, oh,
with like
okay,
these types of characters, there's so much pride involved. Like you, like essentially that's what Rocky. I'm trying to think now because I've just watched them all back to back, so I'm trying to think of which one. But
just
the
describe
one where it's like, oh, I didn't really win. You know, or no, why?
Oh, Rocky 2. Well, no, in that scene in Rocky 2 where he's going, man, I won, but I didn't beat him. I won, but I didn't beat him.
Which that is like the perfect way to retcon a franchise, where at the end of Rocky 1 there ain't gonna be no sequel, and then at the very beginning of Rocky 2, let's bring it on. It's like it's one of those where if you know Apollo Creed's character, where he's like, as soon as there's eyes on the other guy, I want a rematch. I'm not said I wanted a rematch. You know what I mean?
Well, he's reading the letters.
No rematch.
Well, he's reading the letters and it's saying, how much did you get paid to keep that bum around for 15 rounds? And like he just can't live with that. He's like, and that's why then when you see him training and he's doing the Creed in 3, I'm gonna knock his ass out this time. I'm gonna make sure I beat him this time. And even in the beginning of the fight, Mickey's, he's gonna try to kill you quick because obviously he's gonna try to kill you in these first 3 rounds. You get through that and we're good, but like, and he does, he tries to get, but that whole pride of the warrior of like, yes, he won, but he didn't win. He won, but he didn't win.
It also carries over to Rocky 3, with Rocky's beef with Mickey for he was like, one of those setups. No, those weren't setups. Those are good fighters. They just weren't, on that championship level. And it's like, that's if you're like a competitor, like think about just movie trivia, like anybody's watching this movie trivia, it's like you're playing against someone who's really good at movie trivia or even debates. You're good at someone, but at the end of the day, if you want a title, or if you're defending your title, you want the best. You don't want really good. You know what I mean?
To be the man, you got to beat the man. Ric Flair said it best. To be the man, you got to beat the man.
No, they wasn't setups.
Exactly, and that's why I love Rocky so much. That's why it's literally my favorite franchise. So we're gonna move over because we don't want to make this.
We'll talk about it. Mickey Goldmill is my favorite character in the franchise.
He's definitely he's
great.
He's one of the most important. I wouldn't say he's my favorite just because he has, I'm similar to like Rocky, where it's like you weren't there with me. You know what I mean? He's kind of selfish. He's definitely a clout chaser, but like you understand why, and you love him. You end up growing that love for him just like Rocky did. But like at the end of the day, Mickey was a clout chaser. He's like, he didn't want Rocky, because he thought
I'll just leave it and say, Message me when you're done watching the director's cut of Rocky 4. You're gonna fucking love it. I'm telling you, you're gonna love it.
I
You're gonna
can't
fucking
wait.
love
So
it.
I'm gonna transition this into this. So we just got to talk about the Rocky franchise. So I've kind of was hinting that behind the scenes in my mind that I want to do. I'm gonna turn this into like a franchise episode. So Rocky's my favorite franchise. I know you're a horror guy. What's your favorite franchise? Is it horror related? Is it something geek related that would be
Horror
surprising?
franchise,
Or just any franchise, but my
yeah,
guess would be
yeah.
related, like Nightmare or Halloween would be my guess. But like I know there's a lot of lows in those, so I don't know as a whole, would that be your number one? So I'm curious.
I'll break it down like this.
Did you say favorite horror franchise?
No, franchise.
No,
I was just
franchise
saying
in
my
general.
guess for him would be horror.
But
so
if I had to,
yours, Jake.
I have to break it into two because I would say my favorite horror franchise is probably the Halloween, just because I like the mythology of Michael Myers and the shape of evil and the Dr. Loomis stuff. Like, I think it's the deepest out of all of them because Freddy Krueger just goes into Looney Tunes lands a little too much too often in the later movies, and the Halloween movies never had that. It's like in my match I talk about, he's Michael Myers has been consistent no matter what Halloween movie you watch. His character is consistent, period. Like no matter who, what's around him changes, but he never changes, and that's so you always know what you're going to get. Now, as far as a non-horror, this might sound weird. I love the Tremors franchise. I'm a huge Tremors fan. So, this might sound weird. I love Tremors, and I love the kind of franchise they've set up around it. Like, because the original movie is in my top 10 favorite films of all time. I love that movie so much. But yeah, and but like the way they've been able to build on that mythology, I don't know how many of them you've seen or if you've seen any of them.
I've only seen the first one.
The first one. Okay, so there's 7 movies in now, believe it or not.
Yeah, when you said franchise, I was like, franchise? Wow, really? I guess
no,
there's a lot.
There's 7 movies in, but they have set up their own little universe because Michael Gross, who was Bert, the survivalist in the original movie, has become the main protagonist of every single film, especially after the second one. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, he's become the main guy, and Netflix has picked it up. They did the last 2, and then Jamie Kennedy was in 2 of them as kind of like his new sidekick, but they've expanded out on the graboid concept. They've got ass blasters now, and they've got shriekers, and they've got these like all these different forms of the original monsters. Like, they've been able to set up their own little cult franchise that, like, if you're really into it, you're really into it. But like, not a lot of people dig it, but like, I really do, and I get into that stuff. So it's a strange one, but I really dig the Tremors franchise.
Well, I love that the way you're describing it is kind of how I feel about the Saw franchise. Where
I love the Saw franchise too. I'm a massive Saw fan as well.
Like
I love the mythology of that.
All of the ones that have like involved the John Kramer storyline are perfect for me. Like, I just feel like the through line of the John Kramer franchise, even though like you can tell like 1.5 of them are like kind of like, like we got lucky that it works, and they were kind of just bending the writing a little bit, but like for the most part it works. Like, if you told me, like, kind of like Star Wars, where it's like, if you told me like, oh, this was the plan all along, I'd be like, all right, I half believe you, but at the end of the day, it works. You know what I mean? So like the execution is done so well. So like for me personally, like I'm a huge Saw fan. So 1, 2, 3, 4, perfect movies, and Jigsaw, perfect movies. Guess what? All of them involve John Kramer one way or the other. You know what I mean? Like that's why it works. Like five is half and half because it kind of
when they pivot to the Costas Mandalore, what's the other detective guy, Hoffman and all those guys, and the Jill, the wife, and all that stuff. It gets a little more convoluted, a little more.
Like, it's still watchable for me.
It's still watchable. Yeah. Well, here's the cool thing about the Saw movies is that when you watch them, like if you marathon them, like over the course of like 2 days or whatever, like they wrap up every single loose thread you could possibly imagine, every little thing. Like, if you pay attention and watch them, like, it's amazing how tight those movies are. That's actually what I'm saying. So like together, I wouldn't be surprised. It's pretty incredible.
Like most of the times they got lucky. You know what I mean? They're like, all right, we just happened to figure out a way that this works. Or they even if they retcon something where they kind of like twisted it a little bit, but like example, like the Carrie Elwes stuff, or like the fact that he came back, like if you make, like, there's enough evidence where I'm like, clearly that's bullshit. Like there's no way, there's no denying it's bullshit, but there's enough evidence in the actual story, or like I buy it. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's what makes like this is what I say about like anything where it's like, or even when I was joking about the Last Christmas stuff, where like it can be like so obvious and so goofy and so silly, but like if like the emotion and like the connection is there, you buy it. You know what I mean? And similar to this, where it's like, all right, or even the Jigsaw stuff, same exact thing, where it's like it just the way it works and the build up until the end, you're like, you buy it. Like obviously you're not dumb, it's either a retcon of something or it's they're bullshitting their way through it. But by the end, you buy it and you accept the fact that you're like, I like how they went about it. And that's literally my only thing with Spiral, where I'm like, because it's only one movie, I really like where it's going and I trust like the franchise, but I have to see that it's going to go into somewhere that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, literally like without spoilers, because pandemic stuff, you might and like I just want people to get viral. But like when the one character goes down the elevator and it's the bye-bye thing and you're going
dun, dun, dun,
idea.
dun, dun,
Yeah,
dun,
exactly.
dun, dun, dun,
Like
no.
that wraps up, like that exact concept wraps up, then I'm like, wow, now Spiral ends on a high note, and that's a banger. You know what I mean? For me, otherwise it's pretty good. You know what I mean? I like it. You know what I mean? But like if it ends like one or two movies down the road where it like pays off, it could be like Saw 1. You're like, wow, he was dead the whole time on the ground. That's awesome.
Well, no, and even like Saw 4, you're like, holy shit, Saw 4 took place at the exact same time as Saw 3. What the fuck? You're like, what the shit?
So look,
like it's the same dude. Fact. Like, what the fuck?
Fun fact: Saw 4 to Saw 1 is similar to Saw 3, and I mean Rocky 3 and Rocky 1 with me. Where it's like it's so like there because like I love the emotion in Saw 3, but like Saw 4 includes that emotion, like in hindsight by the end, but like the payoff and everything it just goes. You know what I mean? Saw 3 is the only movie that's 2 hours long in the entire franchise. You know what I mean? And you kind of feel it. You know what I mean? Like the emotion is so great that like it could like contend with Saw 1 for being my favorite in the franchise. But because of the 2 hour length, Saw 4 jumped into second for me. So for me in the Saw franchise, Saw 1, Saw 4, Saw 3, Saw 2, because Saw 2 is probably the funnest game. Like, because it's like the entire movie's a game, and like it's one of those. Well,
and it's like booby trap rooms. It's like a haunted house type thing, but it's it's a fun house.
And the gimmick,
the gimmick of it is fun.
Especially as a huge Tarantino fan, like and Nolan fan, like whenever time comes into play of something, you're like, oh, that's cool. Where it's like not you're not watching in real time. Like that's cool. You know what I mean? And like no one saw that coming. Like I wouldn't believe anyone if you call that twist. I wouldn't believe it because it's like. It's not really a twist, but it's like it's one of those where it's just like, wow, damn.
Well, and 2 and 3 really give Jigsaw, Tobin Bell, excuse me, I'm blanking on his name for a second. But they really 2 and 3 are the best ones to showcase what a great actor Tobin Bell is. Like he really gets a chance to like chew it up, in those scenes in 2 where he's just sitting there spouting his philosophy to Donnie Wahlberg, and then number 3, he's still giving this performance when he's just laying in the bed and stuff, while dying, having brain surgery and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, like they really give him a chance to like shine with that stuff, and it's really fun. Even in Saw 4 has all that flashback stuff with him and Cecil and all that stuff. All that stuff is great. Like that stuff is excellent. I love those movies.
That's why I love the character of John Kramer. That's why I always call it the John Kramer storyline. You always say the Skywalker saga in Star Wars, like the Kramer saga. You know what I mean? Like that's how I feel, because everything, how he's connected. Like it's like what do they say about the best villains? The best villains are the ones that you don't agree with, but you believe that they believe that they're right, and
that they're doing the right thing. Yes,
or that they have the end goal. You know what I mean? They might be aware that they're not doing the right thing.
You believe in their justification of what they're doing, and that they believe in the justification of what they're doing. Yeah,
he insists to that, where it's like he's like, I'm not a murderer. I despise murderers. But like, come on, my guy.
Well, Donnie Wahlberg kind of has a point when he goes, making somebody put a gun to their own head and making them pull a trigger is still murder. Like it's like, bro, you kind of have a point there.
Exactly.
Like it's still,
guess what?
They didn't wake up in this situation. You put them in this situation where they could die. You're still culpable.
Like putting those ideas out there, and that's why I feel like Saw is such an because like if you really think about it, most people that I don't want to say diss Saw, but like kind of like push Saw off to the side are the ones that like got into Saw once like Saw 5, 6, and 7 came out. Whereas all you knew is the technical torture porn, the cheating. As ironic as it sounds, other than the opening trap in Saw 7, which I despise because it's the only one in the entire franchise.
So stupid. It doesn't feel right. Well, and it doesn't feel like it connects to anything. It's like
It
so
doesn't.
random.
It literally doesn't. It's
it doesn't.
literally
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
because
yeah.
at least in Saw 5, that's Hoffman's first time doing a trap because he wanted to
Sure.
prank the guy who killed his brother, and then
Mhm.
anything that Amanda did was bullshit because she was jealous. Whatever, you know what I mean? At least they all connect to the main story. Whereas the opening one,
But that
7,
one doesn't come back to anything
nothing.
in Saw 7,
Nothing.
and that's why that one's one of the is probably the worst of the series in my opinion.
And that's
I
what
don't
people
like the
think
final
of.
chapter at all.
Yeah, and that's what people
I
think
don't
of
like
when
that
they
one.
think of the torture porn that they call like Saw, because that there's no meaning. So it's like it's one of those where it's like I love having like franchises or movies where you want to defend them because you're passionate, and like that's why I love the concept of top 100s, where it's like the reason we talk about movies is because we want to talk about the stuff that we watch movies to get out of our own worlds, and we want to live in fairyland. You know what I mean? So it's like you're not just watching essentially what you were talking about earlier with the people who watch Hallmark movies, where it's like that's your comfort food. You know what I mean? So it's like
Sure.
you find something that that fits in your pocket and like is in for you. But so if you don't have that passion for that, like people joke or tease or talk shit about people who have, for example, top 100s, where it's like, oh, that's the AFI top 100 or the IMDb top 250. Those aren't genuine. It's like you can have movies on that list if they connect to you. You know what I mean? Like you when you guys see my list, you're gonna see that it's not a 1-for-1 carryover. You're gonna see enough on there. You're like, oh, those are popular movies. But when you hear me talk about them, you're like, oh, I believe him. You know what I mean? Versus, oh, he just came out of film school. He's told that he's supposed to love. You know what I mean? That's one of those where it's like you're gonna have. You should have passion, but also you should also have love for film. So combine it, and you have a nice mix.
Well, no, that's what
I'm
mine
just
is.
grateful for every day that I do not wake up in a Henry Bay's saw trap.
I'm glad,
Jesus
because that's tomorrow.
But if you go back and watch my 64, my 64 is genuinely a list of these classic movies that show up on a lot of lists that genuinely are great, which I've watched many times, but it's a lot of my comfort favorite films.
Yeah.
Like I was talking about, Tremors is like my number 3 or 4 because I've watched that movie legitimately over 300 times, and that's not an exaggeration. Between cable, VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, you name it, I've watched that movie. It is, it's a movie I can put on anytime and just fall into that world, you know what I mean, like with those characters, and it just is nice. Or something like Gremlins 2, like weird movies like this, they're just comfort movies. Like you got those movies you can just put on, and like every line, every scene, but you can like just be like, man, like I fucking love this movie. Like it's just and mine's a total list of that type of stuff, like you were talking about. Like and of course Jaws is on the list, Goodfellas is on my list, stuff like that that's on a lot of people's lists because they're great. But like my list is genuinely like stuff that I have seen over and over, and like are genuinely my favorites that I could put on anytime.
And
so
that's
what I do.
One thing that I was like when I'm thinking of my criteria, my list, I'm like, all right, so I've had to have seen it a few times, where it's like, I've never seen any movie 200 times, because I've just watched a lot of movies, I expand them out, blah blah blah. So like my goal is at least 5+. For like my favorite movie of all time, like I don't know if you know it, so I won't spoil it, but my favorite movie of all time, I haven't even seen that over 20 times. It's pushing it, but like it's bar none my favorite. Like it's been my favorite for almost 4 years at this point, of since I've been talking on movies, where it's like I've watched a bunch and I'm confident most people know it, no doubt, but like I just haven't. Whereas like there's a bunch of people like I think on YLS when they did the very first one, Mike Hanley, when he's talking about his movies, he's seen like Jurassic Park, his number one, like 400 times, like what you're talking about. It's like I don't want a movie like that. Even the movie that I watched every day as a kid, which I also won't spoil because I feel like if you're on the list, I'm curious your reaction to it. But even that movie where like that was my quote unquote my kid movie, my comfort movie. Like I would go to the video store every day and I would pop that on. I know all the lines to it. Jake knows it, but we'll leave it at that. But it's one of those where it's like even then I still haven't seen it probably over 50 times even, and probably 50 is the high part of, you know what I mean? So like my how I think about it is like how when I think of that movie, like if we're having a debate and you or if I see it on someone else's list and it's lower, am I offended? Am I offended if someone doesn't like it? Like that's why I when I obviously I was joking earlier about the Rocky 5 thing, but like I live and die on the fact that I think Rocky 5 is a fantastic movie, because whenever I hear people say it's bad and dog shit, and I even hear Sylvester Stallone himself say it's bad and a terrible movie, I get offended. You know what I mean? Because I have that much love and passion for it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I want to have that.
Rocky Five. I don't say it's bad. Like I don't put it as high as a lot of the other Rocky movies. I will actually defend that. I think it's a pretty okay movie. You know what I mean? Like I think it's pretty. I think it's decent. You know, like I'm saying, like, but there are things that are great. Like that, the Duke character is like one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise.
Much better than the shitty promoter in Creed 2.
No, and I actually like
George Washington Duke is so much better than the asshole promoter in Creed 2.
Yeah, he's way better than him. But yeah, only in America. No, he's great, and I really do like the dynamic, the kind of triangle of Rocky treating Tommy Gunn as his son more than his actual son, and paying attention. Like I like all that stuff. I think there's great concepts and ideas in there that I think if Stallone, I know he didn't direct Rocky 5, but if he did, you know, I think if somebody did a re-edit of that movie and maybe dug up some other footage and kind of maybe reworked it a little bit, there's some good concepts in there. Like I legitimately think there's some good stuff there. There's a reason John Alvinson came in. He must have seen something in the movie that he liked. You know what I mean? You know, like there's something there.
Upon you saying that, we're going to get like Rocky 2035. Something like that. Like we're going to get a whole reboot of Rocky in probably 15 years or so.
So this is actually funny that because this is one of Austin's pet peeves of just the renaming franchises. So I don't think that's the case. But I do think that at some point we are going to get an inspired by Rocky type new character. Whereas,
well, I mean,
people are trying to redo Indiana Jones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, they're all failed attempts. Like The Mummy, you know, for Indiana Jones, you know, 20 years later. I wouldn't call that a failed attempt, but like that was the first thing that came to mind. But anyway, like I feel like there's going to be a legit, like we're going to build a franchise around a boxing or maybe even UFC because that's more popular now. But you know what I mean? But I do believe that that's possible. That's coming once the Creed franchise dies out, depending on where that ends. So maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see where. I think. Do you think Creed 3 is going to be the finale of this? Like, is it going to be a trilogy? You think? Like he'll do that and kind of.
So
and kind of see where it goes from there.
The story goes of where it went from, you know, Creed developing or accepting the Creed, you know, moniker and like you know, becoming a Creed, not just Donnie, and then in 2 becoming champ and like, you know, essentially once again fighting.
Finding his heart. I think finding his heart in that movie, like finding his spirit and his like his will,
not
you know,
just
like having
edge.
to drive that out of it. Yeah.
In 1 he had the edge. In 2 he had the heart. So in 3 I feel like I feel like that's a perfect time for closure. You know what I mean? Whereas in like Rocky. Like in theory, Rocky 3 would have been good to end on Rocky 3 because of where it ended. So it's like, don't get me wrong. If they did a Creed 4 after, depending on where Creed 3 goes, I wouldn't be surprised just because of why wouldn't you? If you have something there, obviously Rocky 4 and 5, you know, on paper, you know, attest to that. But I feel like based on where it's going, yes, 1, 2, and 3 for Creed would be a perfect like closed loop of just, you know, up, down, and on top. You know what I mean? Or you know, they could go balls out. I'm not recommending this. I'm not even predicting to do this, but like if they did like an Apollo thing where he dies in the ring and you just kind of and the Creed franchise with him dying,
that'd be awesome by my count. I did make the argument
have some balls.
Creed 2 kind of surmised Rocky 2, 3, 4 in one story.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's almost a retelling.
It's just like they just impacted all those movies. So
and that's why.
What is Creed 3 and what is Creed 4 hypothetically?
I mean, honestly, Creed 3 could be more like Rocky Balboa, where it's like at this point he's a family man, kind of a combination of Rocky Balboa and Creed 3, where he's a family man. He doesn't have that heart. He doesn't have that eye of the tiger, you know, and he needs to find that because, you know, he doesn't want to go out like a punk. Or they could literally full circle it and just, you know, retire from boxing and just be a family man for you. I don't know. It's one of those, especially with Michael B. Johnson. Like I feel like he doesn't have that much hubris to like need to be, you know, what Apollo was character wise. You know what I mean? So I feel like, you know, I don't know. I'm genuinely curious. Like him directing it, like is that a shtick? Like is that a gimmick of like, oh, you know, Stallone direct him, I want to direct him, or does he really have something to say? And I'm genuinely curious.
I mean, yeah, it's up in the air. We'll have to see when it gets there. I mean, if he thinks, I mean, it could be his end to try the directing thing just because he's already got the franchise to
Exactly.
jump
That could be
into
too.
it. You know what I mean? But that's the same thing with that Stallone did, where John Avildsen directed the first one and then he jumped in and directed the second one, the third one, fourth. You know what I mean? And same with even he did, when he directed Rambo 2, Rambo, you know what I mean? Like he needs that jump, that place to kind of slide in to at least try it out, but with something that's already established. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No,
and we can see if he's got it. And then from there, if he does a good job and feels like he's got more to say in an original story, then he can jump off of there. And then you go, oh, well, he did a pretty good job with Creed 3. Like, let's see what he's got as far as something like going back to something like a Fruitvale Station or something like that, like just some dramatic story or something like that.
Well, I like that you brought up the Fruitvale Station because of depending on my mood, I'm like mid-tier on Black Panther, but like the Killmonger character is.
I am too. I got shit for that on one of these shows recently.
Yeah.
I think it's fine, but I don't think it's as good as people think.
For me, Killmonger is an S tier level character. You know what I mean? And
but he disappears for like an hour. He disappears
for
like an hour. That's my problem with the movie.
And that's fair.
Forever.
But to get to my point of how he was able to bring that passion for the Killmonger character and like that storyline and that concept, I feel like he could bring that to the table of his own movie. You know what I mean? So it's like that's why I said when you brought the Fruitvale Station, I'm like, I feel like he's got something to say. You know what I mean? I don't think that was Ryan Coogler and the MCU team with that writing. I feel like he had something to say. You know what I mean? He's trying right now, like what was that? Without Remorse, trying to do the Tom Clancy stuff, trying to get into the franchises. But I really think Michael B. Jordan is like a Denzel, where he doesn't need he's not a franchise guy. He's more of just a big center of the room actor, and like, let me tell a story and let's be a voice. You know what I mean? And I'm hoping that he really goes that way. But in an age of franchises and blockbusters and money, you take with what you get. You know what I mean? When there's no, and we're given.
Well, you do it when you can. It's a lot of this concept of that we've seen over the years of one for them, one for me. You do the big thing to get your head in, to put your head in the door for the passion project, and then you do the big mainstream project to get the next passion project. We see that a lot with directors. Directors will do the big thing to then do the smaller budget passion script that they had or something that they're really have a drive for, and then they do the other the big movie again to kind of get the funding for the little one. We see that a lot. Like that's not
a new thing. You do the payback picture because your friend says you owe him.
That's true. What is one of the big ones? I'm trying to think of right now. Like, I'm just blanking on one of the big ones where it's a main director who did a studio level film, so they can get like what is the expression of when they're getting a blank check afterwards? Like, I know.
Well, there's been a lot of those. I mean,
Blank Check was a Disney movie.
Shut up.
No, there's a podcast called the Blank Check podcast with I'm forgetting the guy's name, but they talk about that concept where a good example of that is Robert Zemeckis blew up with Back to the Future, and then he did the passion project of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which that was a passion project he'd been trying to do for 10 years, but he had to have the big success of Back to the Future and the big thing to do that one in between. And then he went back and did Back to the Future 2, 3, and then he goes and does Forrest Gump. Like it's kind of a, that's just one little example. The up and down. Who Framed Roger Rabbit obviously was a big success.
Like a feather in the wind.
Yes. Well, even Spielberg was passionate about Close Encounters of the Third Kind because his original student films were like these UFO like science fiction things. If you go back and see the footage of it in the Spielberg HBO documentary, where he was really passionate about science fiction, but he had to go through the trials and tribulations of Jaws, and then once Jaws became the biggest blockbuster of all time at the time, and made $1 bazillion, they gave him a blank check to do whatever. And he said, I want to do this family story with this tinge of science fiction, and this family story that he was passionate about this couple going through their tribulations, things like that. So that was kind of like the blockbuster to the passion project to then he had to go back and do like, he did 1941 next, so that doesn't really count, but like, but
even Die Hard Spielberg people doesn't count that much.
Yeah. So, but that's just, again, one of those, every major director has that stuff. Even with like Martin Scorsese, he does something like The Wolf of Wall Street, but then goes back and does like Silence, like a smaller film, and then kind of bounces back with other things. I mean, there's tons of examples of that throughout film history of the one for them, one for me.
Like, I still haven't gotten it yet, but I know that there's one that eventually I'll hit you up and be like, oh, this was the one. You're like, oh yeah, no shit.
I'm trying to think. Well, I want to say it's something like why do I want to say like Peter Jackson, like something like he does like Lord of the Rings, and then he wants to do
Lovely Bones. Was that
Lovely Bones or something? I don't know, or I'm trying. It's something like that. Not maybe Del Toro. Well, Del Toro does like something like Pacific Rim, and then wants to do like Crimson Peak. Like something that he's more like in tune with. I don't know.
Oh no, it's not Del Toro, but that's a good example. When after Devil's Backbone, he does Blade 2, and then he got Pan's Labyrinth, the money for that. You know what I mean? It's
right.
It's that's a good example. I don't know if that's the one, but it might be where it's like after Blade 2.
Well, even though it wasn't a small movie, Christopher Nolan does like The Dark Knight, and then does Inception, and then he does Inception, which he was like, which is something like he wrote and had this concept of trying to do, but he had to have the big Dark Knight movie to get the blank check to do Inception. Then he goes back and does Dark Knight Rises. Then he goes and does like Interstellar, which he was passionate about. Even though it was a big movie. I think
that's actually funny you bring that. So Batman Begins. Like nowadays, you don't think of prestigious small film. Like
Batman Begins, and then the Prestige, like you were talking about,
and then Dark Knight. So it's like he really was building.
He really is up
his
and down.
credit,
yes,
and like that. Honestly, if you think about the Dark Knight Rises trilogy, where it's like he used that. He spread it out perfectly to like become who he is today. And it's like I'm a diehard Nolan fan, which once again you'll see once we start talking about my movies. But it's like one of those where it's like. He literally used the Dark Knight trilogy to fund his career and like
to fund his in between. But again, Prestige he was passionate about. Inception was a concept he had even back with like Memento. Like he had that concept in his brain for years. He just needed the big budget, big funding to do it. And then the same with Interstellar. He'd always been like that sci-fi dork, like he said that himself, like, and he wanted to do like a space movie, but he had to do the franchise stuff to get the funding to do the thing, like
now he's at a point where it's like boom, Dunkirk, Tenet, like no questions asked, blank checks, here you go, do what you want.
Well, and when you get to that point when you're like him, you're
same
like
thing with like Tarantino, where like no one's gonna stop
no one's gonna stop you. Well, even Tarantino has had his blank check stuff because Reservoir Dogs, they didn't know if that was going to hit or not. It hit a little bit. Like it hit with the critics. It made okay financially, but then he does Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction gets all the Oscar nominations. It makes a whole bunch of movies. Okay. Yeah. But like Pulp Fiction made like $200 million. Like it was a big hit, like it was the biggest hit at that point that he had. And then he goes and does this old blaxploitation passion project called Jackie Brown, which wasn't a big financial hit, but that's like he wanted to do his tribute to blaxploitation with Pam Grier, who he'd always wanted to work with. And then he goes back and does kind of the bigger Kill Bill stuff, but like 6 years later, like the bigger kind of action sort of set piece things. And then he goes back and does the smaller movies again.
Here's a good question.
Same thing.
Quentin Tarantino in his career today, where he's at with his quote unquote, like we're talking about the blank check idea. Does he make Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 as one film and just leave it as a 3.5-4 hour movie? Or do you think he still cuts it into two, knowing that it needs to be split? Like, what do you think?
I think nowadays he could have gotten away with doing like a 3.5 hour theatrical movie, because if you think about it, The Hateful Eight and Django and Once Upon a Time are all damn near 3 hours long anyways.
Exactly.
So and you can get away with that a little bit more now. I think when you're jumping back to 2003 when the first Kill Bill came out, I mean, go back and think how many 3 hour movies were. I mean, the only one I can think of,
not in the mainstream.
It was 10 years earlier than that. Was like Schindler's List or something, where it was like 3 hours. I mean, you didn't see a lot of 3 hour epics or things like. They just didn't allow it. I mean, and not since The Godfather, really. The Godfather 1 and 2
of like the most
Godfather 2 is, I mean, so I think now if he had already had 7 movies in the bank, and then he goes, okay, I got this concept for this Kill Bill thing. It's like it's going to be like 4 hours, but should I break it up, or will you let me release like a 4 hour movie in theaters? They might let him do it, if he had already had 7 movies in the bank and he had an established fan base or whatever. At that point in 2003, he had Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown. He had the critical establishment. I don't think he had the fan base to really
It wasn't
sustain
it was still niche
people
at
to
that
do
point.
3.5. Yeah, you wouldn't have had
film geeks.
people didn't have the patience for it in 2003. I think we have a little more patience for it now. I actually, we've seen more and more of these lengthy movies in theaters, which again, I have no problem with length. It's always as long as you can justify it.
Yeah.
If you can justify it, I'm all for it. Hateful Eight is one of my favorite movies, and it's like 3 hours long. I love the Hateful Eight, and I have no problem with that. And Wolf of Wall Street, same thing. It's 3 hours, but like it justifies the length. If you can do that, I got no problem with it. I mean, look at the Lord of the Rings. How long was the theatrical cut of Return of the King? Wasn't that 3.5 hours in the theater?
I think 320 in theatrical. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the other two were so big that it was like, yeah, do whatever you want, man.
Had
People are gonna
another
go
20
see
minutes.
it.
Who cares?
Just fucking do it. Just do it. But you have to have that build up to it. Otherwise, people are not going to respond to it.
Jake, you got a long 3-hour movie you wanted to bring up?
Oh no, I was just saying I think he still breaks it up into 2 flicks at this point.
You still think so?
Yeah, there are parts that could be chopped out and made into a 3-hour conglomerate. But I think if he's making it in this time, he adds more. That's my theory.
That's fair.
I could see a 3.5 hour cut where you smash the two together. I think there's a way to do it and make some trims here and there where you could do it, because I know he's got a cut of that, The Whole Bloody Affair, somewhere, and he screens it once in a blue moon. He's never made it available physically, but once in a blue moon he screens it at the New Beverly, and it always sells out. So, I mean, he does show The Whole Bloody Affair. I think it's like 4.5 hours. I think something like that. He screens the whole thing fluidly. But yeah, like I wish he would make that available on like a Blu-ray or something. I'd love to see it. Much like the Grindhouse double feature, the one that flows like the theatrical experience, that they finally put out when they first put out the 2 individual movies, but then they finally put out the Grindhouse Blu-ray that flows with the trailers and stuff in the middle and the intermission. But yeah, I wish he would do that, because I think people would be interested to see it, and see how it flows.
That's what I'm talking about. So we're at the hour point, and I want to stay strict with the show, the concept. So I'm gonna.
Well, shit, we could talk another fucking hour. That flew by.
That's what I'm saying. Like, don't get me wrong. Behind the scenes, we might just hey, episode 5, here we go. But
let's go.
In terms of this episode, I'm gonna end it on this. I was like, so everyone, which I'm gonna do the round table concept of the round table. There's gotta have one specific round table here. So one by one, I'm gonna start with Jake. What is a movie from your favorite director, or one of your favorite directors, however you want to think about, whatever comes first to your mind, where it's like, this is the most underrated, and what is the recommendation where you're like, hey, either no one's seen it or doesn't get enough eyes on it? What is the first one that comes to your mind of one of your favorite filmmakers, Kevin Smith, whoever you want to go, where it's like, this is who I'm picking, please go watch this movie or give it another chance? What's your recommendation?
As you said, I'm gonna go Kevin Smith. Watch, since it's my first time, watch Chasing Amy, watch Clerks, but Chasing Amy especially is a fucking fantastic film. Go see it in your local movie theaters.
I don't know about that, but it is one in 2021. I'm definitely curious to see. There are a lot of things that don't hold up for the majority of 2021 eyes, so I'm curious to see the response of new watchers. But yes, From a blanket statement, I do agree, and I do recommend Chasing Amy as well. Austin, what about you?
I think Tarantino is quickly becoming my overall favorite director. I mean, I really, the more I think about it, the more the only one it's not even a dislike. The only one I'm just not really passionate about is Death Proof. Just because I think it just
That's what I'm gonna bring up.
I'm sorry. Okay. To be fair, Henry. To be fair, I have not revisited it in probably 5 or 6 years.
That's why I'm gonna bring it up.
So I need to revisit it. To be fair, I need to revisit it and get back to you maybe on a future episode, and I probably will. And I think what I'll do is I need to pop in the Grindhouse thing and just watch it as part of that. I just remember in the theater just being like, the Kurt Russell stuff was awesome because I love Kurt Russell, and but just there's like a 30-minute lull in there where I'm just not interested. Nothing is hooking me, but besides that, every one of his movies clicks for me, like every single one on various levels. I think not enough people still talk about Jackie Brown. Like Jackie Brown is great.
Ooh,
He's
this is my
so
boy.
good.
It is.
And my boy Robert Forrester is like, rest in peace. Robert Forrester is so good. His dynamic and his relationship with Pam Grier in that movie is dynamite, and like all their stuff is so good. Even Sam Jackson. I don't know if people talk about Sam Jackson is always good, especially
That's my
in Tarantino.
favorite.
He's so
I've
good.
said this on record. That is my number one Sam Jackson performance in any movie, not just Tarantino movie.
He's so
him
great. As
Ordell.
Odell, right? It's like Odell,
Ordell,
I think.
yes.
Yeah,
Ordell,
Ordell. See, yeah, but close enough.
Top tier.
But yeah,
My number one.
yeah, he's so good, and like all that shit. Like that whole movie is great. And when you have the appreciation for, I met Pam Grier at a convention. She's all about like, I have a convention story about Pam Grier where I walked up to her, and it was called the Cult Driving Convention. So Fred Williamson was there, Jim Brown was there, rest in peace. So I got to meet before he died. Sid Haig, and Pam Grier, all them were there. Pam Grier,
man.
yeah. So, and it was a convention that nobody attended. Like 100 people attended this thing. Like it was poorly underattended. But anyways, Pam Grier, I walk up, and at the time I had not even seen Jackie Brown. The only thing I knew her from, and I told her this, was like, this might sound weird, but I know you from Mars Attacks. And she was like, and she's like, you know what? I love Mars Attacks. And I was like, and I didn't even realize at the time that her dynamic with Jim Brown in that movie, how significant it was given the history together. But she's all about like, and power. It's so powerful. Like I got her to sign with these 8x10, power. But when you watch Jackie Brown, like you get it. Like she, finally being able to have that leading performance after like 20 years of being kind of out of the spotlight or being put in side projects. Yeah, Coffee, Foxy Brown, all that stuff. Like, because she introduced Coffee, they did like an outdoor kind of drive-in screening of Coffee later that night, which is cool. But yeah, like Jackie Brown is so underappreciated, man. Like, and not enough people talk about that movie. It's really well written. Jackson's great, but like fucking Robert Forster's awesome. Like he's so good in that movie.
Robert
he
De Niro
the Oscar
with his little bit.
Yeah, De Niro is fun. I mean, it's
two of Robert
has
De
anything.
Niro's most underrated in Jackie Brown and in The Untouchables, whereas he has the showy thing in The Untouchables. When you really think about like who he is in that movie, and also like who he is really in Jackie Brown, if you actually pay attention, like he has so much to do in both those movies with such little screen time. It's like that's the power of Robert.
People forget Michael Keaton's in Jackie Brown, man, as one of like the FBI guys or whatever. Like he's great. Like Debo from Fridays in Jackie Brown. He's Robert Forster's like muscle. Yeah. Like, that movie's so good, and I just don't feel like it gets the love. Same with The Hateful Eight. Because it was coming off of Django, and Django was such a big hit and such a big success, and I think people love Django. But like, if you go back and watch The Hateful Eight, like I've done many, many times, there's great character work in that movie, like tremendous acting, like the issues they get into, the writing is just top notch in that movie too. So those two are definitely underappreciated.
I won't go in it for too long, but Hateful Eight is the only film in Tarantino's filmography, like the more I watch it, the more it goes down. Not drastically, but just
interesting because it goes up every time I watch it.
Yeah, for me, because it's just
interesting how that works.
Because the dialogue is just so fantastic with me. But like, they're like the more I watch it, the more I do actually fill the 3 hours, and that's like the only one where I'm like, oh my god. But like I said, it's not negative by any means. It's still a 4-star movie. Yeah. I mean, it's still really good. But so since you already brought up the Jackie Brown, and a spoiler alert for when I talk about favorite movies in the future, I'll expand more on that later. But I will talk about the Death Proof one, where it's like every when you think of Death Proof, you think of it as a Tarantino movie going in. It's not. It's essentially what Edgar Wright did in Last Night in Soho. For you're not going into that movie for an Edgar Wright movie. You're going in for that movie seeing Edgar Wright tell a blank movie or horror movie. Whereas you're not going into Death Proof seeing a Tarantino movie. You're going into Death Proof seeing a 70s action crime horror thriller directed by Tarantino. You know what I mean? So it has the quippy dialogue of Tarantino, but everything else, it is a 100% carbon copy of what he's inspired by. You know what I mean? And like the whole undercut of like The Vanishing Point in the second half of The Car. You know what I mean? Like, watch that movie, or at least have a little information of what I've seen that movie once.
For sure.
But after seeing that movie and rewatching Death Proof, I'm like, damn, that has a lot more weight that I knew going into it. And just, understanding the love of and seeing more movies from that era. And essentially imagine watching Cabin in the Woods and never seeing a horror movie. Are you really?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You're not, and never seeing Evil Dead, never seeing any zombie, never seeing
Exactly,
any of that stuff,
and
and
that's
be
my
like,
thought
yeah,
process
well,
on
whatever.
Death Proof. You can't
Yeah,
just solely see it in the eyes of a Tarantino movie, and you also have to have a little bit of background. You know what I mean? It's like when you go into an MCU movie at the end in the later half of the movies, you're not expected to love Endgame, but never seeing the other ones. But that's not Endgame's fault. It's what it is going into it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's one of those
the
where
fan service, the references, they're not going to mean anything if you just jump in and watch Endgame.
Exactly.
You're not going to get all the character moments, the character beats, the payoffs. You're not going to get any of that shit. So no, I totally understand. And again, to be fair, I have not. It's been. I haven't watched Death Proof since I think because I had bought the DVDs, kind of around the time after they came, from the theater. I probably have not watched it since like 2010, just to be fair. So I'm due for a rewatch, to be fair. I will get back to you on that.
Especially if you
sure. To be fair,
the stuff that it's about, or
sure.
Or at least seen it. It has enough. So with that said, another episode of Confidential Roundtable. This is literally like what Austin said there. This is what this is. You just sit here and talk about movies for an hour.
Yeah, see where it goes.
In the community, there's too much structure and there's too much it's the MCU effect of what this community is, where it's like, oh, you have to talk about this or blah blah blah. Let's just talk about have some fun, and you're not going to fill that link. So honestly, we might stay tuned, but we might just carry over and start a new episode.
Let's do another one. Fuck it, let's go.
I'll be down. So if you're watching this on the repeat, make sure you check out the channel, because episode 5 is probably going to be right up. And if you're watching,
we'll do a change of clothes real quick, and then we'll come back.
We'll do a little wipe, a George Lucas wipe right before we do it. All right, so Henry Confidential, Austin Pez, and Jake Tato. We'll see you guys in the next one or later.
Mm-hmm.